am with H&T Lero, the program management team for the Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project. I'm joined here tonight with colleagues from the Department of Design and Construction, as well as our community construction liaisons for the project and many of our sister agencies. So without further ado, I will share the presentation. Oh, Paula, I need to send a request.
Yep, you should be able to now.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, is that visible to you all?
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. Sorry, I'm just struggling.
Oh,
Okay,
sorry.
here are the main topics we're going to talk about tonight. We will go through a bunch of employment resources and then our typical overview of contracts, and then just a highlight of our upcoming meetings. So again, we don't have a hiring update this month, but we have a lot of related events that I will go through. First, our team is going to be tabling alongside Henry Street Settlements Jobs Plus program and NYCHA Reese next Tuesday, January 27th. That's NYCHA Reese, their Resident Economic Empowerment and Sustainability Group, not to be confused with RIIS, the development. So at that event on January 27th from 1 to 3 p.m., folks can drop in to receive resources about hiring programs and training resources in the Lower East Side. And we will also be there to answer any potential construction questions that the neighborhood has. This will be indoors on the ground floor of the Henry Street settlement at 24 Avenue D. So if you know of any job seeking folks, let them know about this event. The information is also on our website. Next, the date of our next quarterly employment resources session is set for Tuesday, February 24th. This is going to be a virtual session from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m., and it'll be hosted by our team with many guests to offer more information on local hiring programs. Anyone interested in attending that can visit the URL that's on the screen or scan the QR code, and the information will be posted tomorrow to our website. Applications for the DDC summer internship program have opened. This is geared towards students at the sophomore level and above, including grad school, who are studying architecture, engineering, design, construction management, safety, and project controls. It's a 10-week program from June 1st to August 7th, and applications are due on March 31st. I mentioned this at last week's CB3 about Henry Street Settlement's workforce development program. They have opportunities aimed at placing interns and professionals from the community into businesses that need them. There's more information on Henry Street's website and in our presentation from last week's CB3. It's also on our website under the Work With Us section. This presentation is always posted the following day, so those links will be clickable on our website tomorrow. Moving on to our regular construction updates, focusing on Project Area 1 and parallel conveyance tonight. Um, this is where I was running into some problems. Is there a map on this page?
No.
Okay, I apologize. But I think most of the folks on this call are familiar with the map. So I will try my best to describe the areas I'm talking about. From the Corlears Hook Bridge down to Montgomery Street, there is ongoing construction of the independent flood walls down there, as well as testing of the two floodgates that are installed. In the construction area that's along the FDR Drive, sort of in between the open area and the FDR Drive, there's work on the tennis and parks M&O buildings, along with various utility work. And then north of the tennis courts up to the East 6th Street area, there's a lot of activity at the East Houston Street ramp. I hopefully have a photo of that on the next couple of slides. And then in the northernmost section of the park, there's a lot of sewer work near the site of the track and utility work along the waterfront. And then I'll speak a little bit more about the Reese area on the next slide. And finally, in the open area of the park, we have ongoing punch list items. I'm not sure if Diana's on. I know that she had requested some more clarity on the punch list at the last CAG meeting. I don't have that this time, but I will promise to have something for you in February. I'm sorry I don't have it in time for tonight. In the East 10th Street and East 14th Street areas, this is adjacent to the NYCHA Reese properties. We are getting closer to the noisy and disruptive pile installation that we've been talking about for a few months. Um, we anticipate in the next 1 to 2 months that the installation of flood wall piles will begin near East 13th Street. This is the area that's sort of in the blue box at the top of the photo or of the graphic. This operation has to take place at night because it requires FDR drive lane closures, and that is when the DOT allows us to close lanes is overnight. And then around March, we hope to begin installing piles for the ramp for the East 10th Street Bridge. That will also be noisy, but it will be during daytime hours, so it's hopefully a little bit less disruptive to residents. We do have a slew of vibration monitors in place inside buildings all around the Reese campus. And we're in regular contact with the management at Reese as well as the tenant association leaders. We will schedule virtual and hopefully in-person meetings for tenants in advance of the night work once we have a firmer schedule around that. Um, in that spirit, we aim to provide as much advance notice as possible for the night work, and we will issue formal advisories when all of that is scheduled. Then much later in the year, there will be probably a couple of FDR Drive closures that are required for the floodgate that crosses the FDR up on the north end, and then to place the East 10th Street Bridge. Like with the other bridges, it'll be assembled within the park area and then rolled into place or lowered into place during an overnight closure of the FDR Drive. Unfortunately, I think the photo on the left is not going to display here, but it is very similar to the photo on the right. This is utility lines. I included this photo to kind of demonstrate how carefully a lot of the excavations around utility lines has to happen. We can't just stick an excavator in the ground. When we get near those utilities, we have to remove everything around it by hand, which can take a little bit longer. The photo on the left was just showing a manhole that was installed as part of the sewer work in the area west of the FDR Drive near Reese. All of the photos, when we upload the presentation tomorrow, will be in the slide. They are showing in PowerPoint, but not when I put it into the presentation mode. Um, I think you're going to see two photos on this slide. On the left, we have the East Houston Street work. There's the micropile operation. That's those small things sticking out of the ground that will serve as the foundation for the retaining wall at East Houston Street. And then on the right, it's a shot from a drone of the combi wall installation along the waterfront. You can also see the pier caps for the esplanade to the right of that over the water. This is at the very north end of the site near the Con Ed facility. This is another drone shot. It shows kind of the variety of work that's ongoing on the northern end. To the left, you see a trench for deep sewer work. This is just south of the track house. The track house is still standing there. And then midway through the photo, you can see the buried flood wall running right up through the center. The gaps in that flood wall are just to enable equipment to move in and around, but as the project progresses forwards, gaps like that will be closed before the fill is brought in. And then it's harder to see here, but along the waterfront, there's the bulkhead wall that's being installed. And then once again in the water, you can see the bare esplanade pier caps where the precast concrete pieces will be placed once we start reconstructing the esplanade in this area. We received a lot of questions at the last meeting, so I tried to provide as many follow-ups during this meeting as possible. This is just a reminder, this first one, that the compost yard team will present at the CB3 Parks Committee next month on February 12th. Michael asked last month about the warranty on the trees that were relocated to Corlears Hook Park. The warranty restarted when those trees were planted, so 24 months from the time that they were relocated. Wendy asked about the material on fields 3 and 4. The surface there is synthetic turf, as with the track infield, as it was before. And then fields 5, 6, and 7 are natural grass. Wendy also asked about the soil reporting requirements. We are required by local law 72 to report about lead. Other soil is not required to be reported on, and they will have to be requested through the FOIL process. Moving on, we also have received some feedback about the road conditions near Con Edison. That's in the pathway of like the official East River Greenway detour. We shared those concerns with DOT. We'll provide any updates if we hear them. It may also be worth filing a 311 request just to sort of increase the volume of requests in that area. And then Frank had asked me about the future work in the vicinity of Gouverneur Gardens, and in particular with the Montgomery Street flood wall. The major coordination that needed to be done with Con Edison in this area is complete. That's also true of the neighboring BMCR project. So within that exact intersection, there's not a whole lot of heavy construction that should continue related to Con Edison. They may still have trucks in the area for cable pulling or minor operations like that. And then Project Area 1 has a bit more work to do at the intersection of South Street and Montgomery Street. So not on the Montgomery Street flood wall that's connected to Gouverneur Gardens property, but within the intersection itself, there is some minor excavation and some manhole work that needs to be done there. Moving on to environmental monitoring for Project Area 1, the monitoring locations for December remained the same as in November. Like I've said, we've sort of increased the number of monitors in the north end as work has progressed up there. It was a relatively quiet night. No alerts above 30 minutes. That's, partly thanks to the cold and the lower wind. But in all of the cases where construction vehicles were responsible for increased detections on the monitors, we applied dust mitigation techniques. For the parallel conveyance project, the work in location 1 is sort of winding down. The Water Street and South Street work is complete. There's still remaining sewer work on Jackson Street at the very bottom of Jackson Street. And then there's quite a bit more work that will be done in Corlears Hook Park. At Lewis Street and Delancey Street South, sewer installation there is ongoing. It's also picking up more on the north end, Delancey Street North. I have a couple cool photos of the work in that area in a couple of slides. And then up at East Houston Street and Columbia Street, the deep excavations for the sewer there are expected to begin sometime next month. So there will be an increase in activity there. And then, as has been the case for a couple of months in locations 5 and 6, just some test pitting and utility relocation. Once work is slowing down on the southern portion, it'll start to pick up there. So homing in on that area that we have a lot of our work right now. Like I said, at Delancey Street South, the deep sewer installation is still very much underway. That is the very, very deep excavations that started in September and is anticipated to continue until around March. And then on Brook Drive and Delancey Street North, that work is also underway and anticipated to continue for the next 5 to 7 months. Vibration monitors are in place in this area, especially at the footprint of the Williamsburg Bridge. Some parallel conveyance construction photos. All 3 of these photos are related to the secant pile installation that I was describing for the deep excavations. On the left, you can see the machine that drills the holes for the secant piles. And then the center photo are the piles themselves. So you can sort of make out the columns that provide the support for this excavation. Those are concrete columns that again just keep all of the dirt back. And then on the right, you can see what this hole looks like at street level. You can see there's kind of a concrete cap around the top of it, which serves as a counterweight to the secant piles, the tubes of concrete, to prevent them from getting moved up by the water table. So some complex work there. And then just a highlight of our upcoming meetings. Again, the compost facility team will be at the February CB3 Parks meeting. Our next CAG meeting will be on the 26th of February. And then we will do our typical ESCR, BMCR construction updates at CB3 Parks in March. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
I don't see any questions. Wow.
Oh, okay, I'll ask a question. Um,
Come
Ethan,
on,
when have
almost had a record short meeting.
you, um, this is actually not a very hard question. Have you, do you have any sense of when, um, there sort of might be, further updates about, like progress on the Esplanade north of where it's open now, or whether, those of us who live up north will get there's any hope of getting, access at least to the Esplanade, without having to go all the way down to Delancey. Do you have any sense from the construction team of when we might be able to talk about those things again?
I don't, but I will take those. Those are like nice and specific questions, so I'll take those back and see if we can get an update. I am less optimistic about access from your area
Hmm.
than I am about, the Esplanade near the area that's already open, but
Hmm.
I'll try to see what timelines look for those areas.
Yeah, and just when there might be a more significant update from them, like, we're on schedule, we're a little ahead of schedule, something like that, just so that we
Yeah,
have some sense of, you know, it's just going to be 2 years and that's that.
right. I
Okay.
understand.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Wendy.
Hi. You didn't directly address this, but I've been getting some complaints about lights being left on the ball fields. Do you know about that? And I,
Yes. So I go ahead.
oh, go on.
Oh, okay. Yes. So recently we made a switch from temporary power to the permanent power that powers that portion of the park. As that was going on, there was an issue with the timers
Okay.
that turn off the lights. So in order to allow folks to resume the permanent activities at parks, the lights were left on, but the situation should have been resolved by now. So if you have gotten those requests, as recently as this week, let us know, because I'm under the impression that it has been resolved.
Okay. It was a couple days, 3 days, 3 days ago. So
Yeah,
hopefully
that
it's okay
tracks.
then. Good. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Anyone else? This might be a record. I don't see any hands, Ethan.
Alrighty.
Ethan, log off now before somebody else logs in.
All right. Well, with that, I am going to hop off, Paula.
Sounds good, Ethan. Have a good
Alrighty.
night.
Thank you all.
Thank
Stay
you,
warm.
Ethan.
See you at
Bye.
Parks.
Wow, 424. All righty, let's transition to the CAG only. And the agenda item is again about shade. Um, we had a meeting with Parks 2 days ago to get some insight from them about how the funding process kind of works. And I am going to, as I typically do, ask one of the people who was at the meeting, one of the CAG members, to maybe, uh, gosh, there's very few people left, to maybe just give some of the main takeaways and main points that you learned from the meeting. Diane, Wendy, Michael,
Sure, I will.
thank you.
Um, so Parks was really helpful in explaining to us how, the different ways that we could uh, advocate for shade funding or even raise shade funding ourselves, um, and what some of the obstacles to actually getting the shade structures in place might be. So, we've been focusing on the traditional process, which is reach out to elected officials. They told us that elected officials are very supportive of this idea. They've already been working with parks and, expect to continue that. But in addition to the fact that the regular funding process takes forever, as we all know. And, it could be years before we can see any results from that. The other issue is that the park is subject to a 5-year embargo on capital spending because it's getting such a big capital spend right now with this resiliency project. And so in order for anything that's even more than minimally intrusive to be done, we might have to get a waiver from OMB, even to do something as simple as put a pole in that would support a shade structure. So it's not impossible, but we would need to work with Parks Department and OMB and elected officials, and everybody would kind of have to collaborate together. The other alternative is to raise funds privately. There's a program called Adopt a Park, and that allows benefactors to raise money, hire a contractor, pay for the work, and then turn the finished result over to the Parks Department. Typically, that involves expenditures of more than $10,000. But that's how we've gotten basketball courts renovated. In the park across the street from me, Tompkins Square Park, that's exactly what happened. So that was done in collaboration with Councilmember Rivera's office, but that's how it happened. Or we can also look into the possibility of raising money that would buy a thing that we want to install and pay the overtime for the Parks Department to install it. So if we wanted another spray shower in the north end, which was something Wendy brought up, or if we want additional umbrellas, we could get money and then arrange with the Parks Department to have those things installed in the park, with, excuse me, by the Parks Department doing overtime. So those were the basic options. They were encouraging us to look at the possibility of installing a lot more umbrellas, reasoning that umbrellas are cheap, they're easy to procure, and they're easy to install, and it probably wouldn't trigger any of these gotchas that they were describing about capital funding. They did not have any insight into our other request, which was to, make sure that shade structures were incorporated into the northern end of the park. The initial feedback we got on that is, oh, but that's a change request and they're already running late, so they're not going to want to do that. So they're open to a lot of different ideas. They're very open to collaborating with us. They understand what the problem is, but those are the paths that we would have to take to raise money and to get the work done. Michael and Wendy, if you remember anything else, take it away.
I want to add that if we have something donated, the timeline would be much faster. So that's a plus. The spray showers, the misters that are by the big AstroTurf field right now, those were not in the plan. Those got added. So that's an example of something that was a change that they did manage, and they said they're pretty cheap. So that gives me some hope for the north end, if that's, something that's going to work out there. And having been to that meeting, I feel like we need to really have a hat campaign and encourage people, and maybe we'll get a hat sponsor of some sort. So bring your hat to the park. Because Diane made a really great point, like the umbrellas or things like that. That is passive. You're going to be sitting there in order to take advantage of that shade. Most people in the park are moving, and a hat is one of the few things you could kind of bring with you. Good sun hat. So, and I bring mine because I burn pretty easily, but yeah, I see a lot of people who are getting sunburned in the park. So.
I'll also add that, thank you for reminding me, Wendy, that we raised the question of park stewardship. Last summer, Partnerships for Parks notified all its partners that there would be no official activities in any of the parks in July and August because of extreme heat and sun. This year, they're rolling that back. There will be like weeding events and, partnership events sponsored in East River Park and Pier 42. And Parks expects to be able to bring movable shelters with them so that there would be water and shade even in places at the waterfront where there's no tree canopy yet. And speaking of tree canopy, they were unusually forthright with us about the fact that it's going to be 10 to 15 years before there's a tree canopy, which of course is not the number that DDC gave us when they were planning this project. That was 5 years, you'll be fine. And Parks is saying 10 to 15. So, I think one of the arguments against shade structures that, DDC is making is, oh, by the time you get through the whole process and get them installed, you will have natural shade, which is the preference of all the city agencies to have natural shade. But with a 10 to 15-year timeline, I think even running through the city design and procurement process, we could probably still beat that. So that's where that was left.
Thank you, Wendy and Diane.
I think the only thing to add, and I'm not sure, Diane, if you covered this or not, but in the second option of like having somebody sort of adopt the park, they not only have to pay for the item that they want to put in the park, but they have to pay for the installation. They have to pay for everything.
Yeah, they mentioned that there's like a queue of priorities. And, those are set by the Parks Department, by community organizations, by community boards. And if you want things to move faster, then you're not only paying for the item that you want to install, but you're also paying for the overtime for the Parks Department to do the installation so that they're spending their regular work hours on the priorities that were set as a group and not basically because somebody brought their way into the front of the line, which is fair.
My suggestion of a cloud machine did not go over well.
So that was great. From them, I think my question now is, what are our next steps?
Yeah.
I had asked Paula, I had kind of lost track of who responded and who didn't and what they wanted from us over the holidays. Paula, you gave me a really good summary of that.
Yeah, I can repeat that now if that's helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that letter that we sent out in December about requesting, $500,000 amount for shade, it was sent to 6 elected officials and I've heard back from 4. So recap. Epstein's office is very eager to help. So we can do a follow-up meeting with them. They had some questions about like what that amount would cover. Marte's office, as I already shared with you, is saying that they are very well aware of this issue and that they are putting in for shade funding both within participatory budgeting and through the capital request process. Assemblymember Lee's office said to fill out a form to start the process of requesting funding, capital funding. And then finally, the new Manhattan Borough President's office, Hoyleman Siegel's office, was forwarded the information, I think, but I'm not entirely sure, from the previous staffer. Anyway, one of Hoyleman Siegel's new staffers reached out and asked how they can help.
So I think in the case of at least Marte, we probably need to respond to them and let them know that it can't be capital funding. Because participatory budgeting process, that is capital, as well as other capital, that it needs to be expense funding. And my hunch is, and I don't think there's anybody on from Solar One, but my hunch is that Kevin Powers did the same thing. He probably gave them expense money and not capital money. And as far as Manhattan Borough President goes, I think we can probably have the same conversation with them, but I don't know. We've only ever gotten from our organization, we've only ever gotten capital funding from them. I don't know if they have expense funding. They might.
Sorry, you mean Councilmember Marte? If they have expense?
No, for the borough president.
Okay.
I don't know if they have expense funding. I think they only do capital funding, but it might be worthwhile to have the same conversation with them that if they're interested in funding this, we've learned from parks that for the next 5 years, it can only be done with expense funding and not capital funding.
Now, wasn't on Pier 42, which had officially opened what, in November or so of 24, I think. They said this, at the end of this year, there could be planting done. Is that right? Did I hear that right?
Yeah, they told us that the warranty for anything it built is 1 year wait. I don't remember which way it was. One of them is 1 year and one of them is 2 years.
I think it's 2 years for
Yeah,
any
2 years
plant.
for the plants, 1 year for anything that's built.
Oh, I thought it was 5 years for anything that's built.
Um, well, I mean, I think what they meant was like if I don't know, something started to fall apart while it was under warranty. You know, like how at Solar One, up in Stuycove Park, they had problems with the sidewalk
Right.
and they ended up replacing it with a different type of concrete because it was crumbling. I think
That's
that's what
right.
they meant by things that were built being under warranty. Um, so they can for a year, they're obligated to fix something that they built that's not working. And then the plants are under warranty for 2 years. And Parks was really like um encouraging us to think about um, taking full advantage of that and allowing the contractor to do all of the plant replacement.
Right, because then it was free.
Yes,
But
because then it's free.
but is it really fast growing grasses? I mean, last summer I took pictures by the fireboat house at the end of the summer, and it was pretty lush there, and partly as the slope made it feel really nice and bushy and shady. But you know, to me that they aren't saying, yeah, you can have pot planters or whatever out there. And I know it's more care. I wish Christina were here and we could hear more about anything related to their construction and work in that area, because is also another place that's, not yet done. So I don't know. It's a frustrating process for sure.
Well, we were also covering Pier 42, which I think is in different circumstances because their warranty period is out or almost run out.
Right.
And Parks did suggest that we hold off at doing anything at Pier 42 until for the next few months or until the spring or whenever it runs out. Um, but I think there's also a question of, and I wasn't clear on this, so we might have to follow up with them. It's clear even at Pier 42 that there are certain plants that didn't thrive. There are some places where you can see that whatever was planted there just didn't make it.
Right.
I don't know if it was replanted and still didn't make it or what. And as you near the end of the warranty period, then there is maybe some conversation to have with the gardeners and the ecology center and interested organizations about whether something different planted there would be a good idea. One question that we wanted to ask the contractor was whether the community could advocate for replacement planting of different types of plants. So do we have to accept another boxwood because a boxwood died? Or could we say that boxwood cost $100? Can we have $100 worth of something that we think would better fit this space, that the community is more interested in, that will be a tall grass instead of a shrub? I think that's another area we could dig into with them.
Good question. Good point.
Yeah, I would imagine that depends on the warranty. I mean, I do know from prior experience that the contractors tend to prefer, because it is under warranty, it's cheaper for them to let the thing die and replace it than it is for them to actually come and water it and maintain it. But
And when they put in the replacement, does that mean another 2-year period? Would they have to take care of it? Or is it the 2 years is up and it's out of our hands, folks? I don't know.
I'm not sure. I think it's the latter. I think it's 2 years, up for 2 years, we will replace this if it dies.
So it sounds like we need to reach out to the elected officials office and clarify that this can't be capital funding and to answer questions that may be different from office to office about what we're looking for.
And, you know, I don't know, to me, the question of accessibility, basically the heat makes the park inaccessible to everybody. And if we look at it from a health perspective, I don't think there's been a heat stroke victim there or anything like that. But I think I really do feel like we need to ask people, put maybe it's signage that says we recommend a hat. They know would not probably like to do that, like they don't like to warn people about, hey, there's going to be a lot of dust blowing around, close your windows. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, let's concentrate on the funding aspect of it and make sure that we get back to the people who are interested to make sure that they understand that this has to be expense funding and can't be capital.
Yeah. And then I think the other question is for those elected offices that are not recommending that are unlike Chris Marte's office where they're saying, just advocate and we will take it from there. I know that Councilmember Epstein's office has just been sending out to constituents and organizations a link to their funding portal. So is that what they would expect? Who's their budget person? Is that what they would expect the CAG to do? Does it have to be a nonprofit among us? I mean, I know we have a number of nonprofits sitting here, but does it have to be a nonprofit that's applying, or does the CAG have enough standing? I think there's still a bunch of unanswered questions about exactly how we do this.
Robin's got her hand up, so I'll let her speak before I answer that question. You're muted, Robin.
Hey, Robin, you're muted. We can't hear you, Robin.
Sorry, I'm listening on my phone on my computer. Quick question. I was just thinking about the idea of a vendor, like you go to the beach and you rent an umbrella and a chair or something like that. I wonder if that's an opportunity for the park for something like that, someone to come in like that, who's providing people with shade.
They specifically said in our meeting that they do not want umbrellas that can blow away. And
it's a hazard liability.
Well, how about chairs with covers or something like that? You know what I mean?
Well, you gotta have somebody manage it. You gotta have someone manage it, and that's a reality. I don't know if you've been to the beach lately, but umbrellas are flying around constantly, and you gotta even kind of watch out for other people's stuff. So I wonder.
I'm not suggesting umbrellas. I'm suggesting some other form of shade. There are chairs that have covers. You sit in your chair, you're covered.
Yeah, what they said, Robin, is that the umbrella is the least expensive option, but the umbrella in the way that it already is there, like you can see the tables that have umbrellas affixed to it, that is something that could be done, and that was the least expensive from my recollection.
Well, I'm sorry I missed the meeting. Sorry, but you guys did a great job. Thank you.
It was so confusing. It'd be so nice if they put out a sheet, so you could really, because now we have to answer questions to everybody else, and it's true. I mean, it's very hard to follow this.
So Diane, I'm not sure what Harvey's sending out. I'm assuming it's probably the same thing that Marte's office is sending out, because now is the time that expense grant applications are due, and I think they're due by February 18th. So I'm actually working on ours for Corliers, but yeah, we would not be able to apply as the CAG, because I can tell you, because we've applied every year, you have to apply as we have to have incorporation papers and 501c papers and all of the things. So I'm not quite sure what Harvey's office means by advocate for it. I don't know if he means advocate for it to the Parks Department or to who, but there's if he wants to do it, he needs to do it on his own without us being able to apply for it. Like they can do it on their own without us, without an actual application.
Paula, do we know who the budget director is?
For Harvey, no, I only deal with Marte's office.
And
Michael, let me ask you a quick question based on what we all heard at that last meeting. And in terms of like, let's say Epstein's office, maybe even someone else knows the answer too, but do we have to specify? I think the answer is no at the initial juncture, but do we have to specify where we're looking to have the shade, or that comes after once the money is allocated?
That comes after, like
Okay.
for our purposes, our expense allocation is for our events. So we just have to give them at the time of application, you just have to give them ballpark, like dates of like this event's going to happen this time of year. Da, da. But if you get selected for funding, you then have to fill out this thing called Exhibit A, which you have to give them all the specifics. You can't, nothing can be TBD. It has to be like, this is going to happen on this date, blah, blah, blah. But that's about events. We've never, like the expense funding that we get does our events, but it also helps pay for maintenance and plants. So those things we don't necessarily have to give them dates for. It's just like, hey, we spent, here's $500 in receipts for all the poop bags that we supplied in the park this year. It's stuff like that. It's stuff that we use throughout the year that we just dip into our expense money for.
Okay.
Paula, did you get a chance to see who responded from Epstein's office?
No, it was like their constituent, like I forget what the title was. Here, I can see.
Community liaison, probably.
Yeah, something to that effect. Constituent liaison
Do we have a name?
of that person.
Hmm.
Benjamin Gutschau.
Okay. I mean, I think we should reach back out to them and say, okay, could we talk? Would you like to talk with us? Let's work through how, like Michael is saying, is this something that we're going to meet with you, we're going to tell you we want this, you're going to work with parks, or do we have to go through the formal process? Because Michael, you're right, the portal that they're using is the standard, city council budget portal.
Okay, yeah, I can reach back out to them.
That'd be great.
Yep.
I mean, I live
And
right
I
around the
don't
corner from that office, so it'd be easy enough to go over there and talk to them.
I don't wish that portal on anybody that doesn't have it, trust me.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it looks like that would have to be done by a nonprofit and, not by the CAG, as you said, but
Yeah, I mean, typically what most offices will do, like for Marte's office, they have a supplemental form that you also have to fill out
Mhm.
once you do your actual application.
Mhm.
But you can also reach out to their budget director and have a meeting with them. So theoretically, Epstein's office should be doing the same.
That's what I was thinking. Exactly. The last I heard, they weren't sure that they were going to have a full-time budget director, but at this time of the year, someone should at least be wearing that hat.
Probably the chief of staff if he doesn't have a budget director yet.
All right, any other next steps?
So Paula, we'll be having a special state assembly election in the first week of February here.
For Powers seat? Or no, the one he's running for.
The
Excuse
one
me.
he's running for.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Epstein just left.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes.
So, I know that constituents here have talked to him quite a lot about the concerns about ESCR and about the project, and he's very familiar with it because Sty Cove is in his old city council district. And so, as soon as that happens, I think we should also reach out to that office, but I think it's going to take a little while because they'll have to get elected and then he'll have to get certified and then they can hit the ground running.
Yeah, okay.
And did
Yeah,
you
and I'm
get,
not,
Hmm?
I'm not quite sure like how like Grace Lee's office or any state assembly person's office is going to be helpful other than helping us advocate for it because they can't really give, at least when when we asked Grace Lee's office years ago for funds, like they can't give a local thing fund. It's weird. Like it's a weird thing about what a state person can use their funding for.
Mm,
Interesting.
okay.
Did you all hear that Trisha,
Great news.
Nishimura,
Yep.
am I mixing up her? No,
Shiamura.
Shimura is the new Parks Commissioner for the whole
Mhm.
city. So
Which
now,
means that we're going to end up bringing in a new Manhattan Borough Commissioner.
oh, that's true.
Yes.
And
Like
I really
our
thought Teresa was very helpful the other day. Flores, and I don't know quite what her role is.
started so Therese used to be our park manager. She used to be the park manager. She used to be what Edwin is now. And then she kept getting promoted. So she's basically kind of like she's Edwin's boss, but she's the boss of like all the park managers for a certain district.
Thank you. Okay.
I was told that she's going to be staying closely involved with East River Park and Pier 42, particularly East River Park, because there's so much capital work left to be done on East River, and they didn't want to just,
Dump it
leave
all
it
on
with
Edwin.
dump it all on Edwin, and he's new and he comes from a different part of DPR, and Teresa's going to stay involved at least through the end of the project.
I have to say, I feel badly for people who live at Reese houses. They have all that work coming in right in their front yard. And as soon as the park is done now, a year or so later, they haven't given us the real number yet, but then they'll start on the floating or whatever you call the overwater piece. So they have years more of construction outside their door. And
Well, I think you heard Ethan say that they meet regularly, and they do. They go to Reese, I think about once a month, or once every couple of months, and they meet directly with. I've seen them there, so they're doing everything that they can to help keep people informed. Um, and ultimately, I'm sure people would be excited to have that flood wall finished.
yes. Wow.
All right. Well, I've got some next steps here. Anything else?
Happy snowstorm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Who knows
totally.
what's the latest prediction?
6 to 12.
Anywhere from an inch to 25,000 inches.
Maybe I'll get my boots out. I don't know.
Guess
Yeah,
Parks won't be answering our emails for a while.
yeah.
And
I made a nice big vat of vegetable soup last night, so I'll be set.
a
Nice.
bat. What time you serving? Thank you all.
All
All
right.
right. Thank you.
Have a
Yep.
good
Thank
one,
you
everyone.
guys. Have a
Bye.
good night.
Night.